All right. Welcome everyone to the South Star Classroom. This is episode 192. Uh,
Woo!
yeah, that's what's going on. And we're joined here by co-host Jubilee Ransom, and I believe
Woo!
Omar is on the way.
Yeah.
So we will await his we will you say that? We will await his arrival. Is that a thing?
Yes, he will love that. That's gonna make him think about coming to America.
There you go.
King Joffrey Jofa.
Coming to
Right.
America.
Right.
Yeah. Um, all right. Well, before we get into today's timely topic, let's it's just you and me, so we can do like a 30-minute check-in, right?
In honor of the doc, he would love this.
Of course he
Absolutely.
would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Jubilee, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. A bright note. My youngest, he graduated from eighth grade yesterday. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. He's off to middle school. Middle school down here in Maryland was quite the journey. But I'm proud of my kid. We relocated down here 3 years ago. No friends, no family. Well, I had like two really close friends, but they're on opposite sides of where I live.
Mhm.
But no friends, no family, no familiar faces at school. Just having to one figure out middle school, which is a journey, and then none of the people that he went to elementary school with and all of that were with him. So quite the journey for him. And then last year, I was diagnosed with cancer last year,
Yep.
and he took care of mommy, and
Oh,
right, and so like just a lot of different like stressors, and he's just come shining through, and I'm super duper proud of him. I'm proud of both my sons, and but I'm highlighting him because he just graduated yesterday. And yeah, and now I'm thinking about high school. I am thinking about where I really want him to go. I don't love where he's supposed to go, so I'm
yeah.
looking for scholarships, possibly private options. I'm just
Yep.
looking for mentors. I'm looking for all summer jobs. I'm looking for all the things that are going to keep him on the right
Yeah.
track. That'll
Yep.
impact his trajectory so that he can be a successful, young, beautiful, Jesus loving black man.
And that's your oldest boy?
That's my youngest. He's
Oh, your
14.
youngest. Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we're
Yes, my
we're
oldest
one
is
year
going to be a
we're
junior.
1 year ahead of him then. We
Okay.
just finished and when but essentially we did the same thing. When we moved back down to San Diego, we started at, I mean, we went from a very small elementary in Oakland that wasn't even really open. It was still COVID. When we came down here, the schools were already open, but the kids had to wear masks. And he went to a massive middle school of 1,500 children, right? It sounds totally unmanageable, but it worked. It wasn't perfect, but yeah, the same thing. Like I can imagine dropping him off and being like, "Good luck, meet some friends." And it took him a while for sure, but now he's got friends, and that was definitely one of the deciding factors where we decided to where he decided he wanted to go to for high school was like there's all these different factors, but then you're like the social thing is like very important too, right? And so we had to calculate that in. It was probably my second choice, but it was his first choice, and we're like, all right, we'll do it. So
Yeah.
anyhow, yeah. So congratulations to you
Thank
and
you.
your son. Yeah, summertime can be interesting. We applied to a bunch of jobs. My son did, and he got zero jobs.
Yeah,
So
same.
he's taking it with stride.
They're young. When they're so young, they don't get as much traction for whatever reason. We were
Yeah,
driving around last week, like, "Hey, are you hiring?" Like, no, no, got to be
yeah,
16, got to be 16. So my oldest is gonna be 16 in September, right? But that three
yeah,
months difference, they're like, "Yeah, no."
yeah. I
Like,
think I'm going to get him a volunteer job at my local where I get my hair cut.
mm,
It's in my neighborhood, and they're all Chaldeans, so they're Iraqis, but they're Christians, they're Catholics, and they're here as as a political like refugees, right? There's a huge
wow,
population down here, and we go there to get our haircuts, and they're very loving people, and it's a totally great vibe. It's like it feels like you're in a foreign country, but you're not. And so I'm like, you need somebody to sweep the floors at the hair
right,
salon?
right, right.
And teach my kids teach them some foreign language or something, you know?
Indeed. Indeed. Omar
Yeah.
Yanar.
Omar in the building.
What up? What up? What up?
What's going
How you
on,
doing?
partner?
Bueno.
The man in black.
Man, it is so hot out there.
Is
Milk
it?
was definitely a bad choice. It's like 108 degrees out there. I was hauling ass from like the conference I was at to home. It's not like
Gotcha.
I can sit there during the conference and be there. So I may be a little hot and sweaty. So if
I
I
am
start
too,
taking off my clothes in here,
There's a song
because
for
it's
that.
getting hot, as the song says,
It's getting
don't.
hot in here.
We'll just move you on full screen.
I am
Oh, yeah.
getting so hot. I'm gonna take my clothes off. This
That's
is
right. That's right.
We
Pretty
won't
pretty
touch you,
voice.
Omar. We'll just ask you to just turn your camera off real quick.
I mean, no one got time for that. Ain't no one want to see that shit.
But
Ain't no one
David,
wanna see that
he'll DJ it. He's got the he'll
Yeah. We got you covered. Don't worry.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Omar?
Overall, dude, doing dynamite. Really excited about the work that we're getting into this year. We'll talk about it sometime on the show. It's just like my big goal is how to get kids out of the classroom into internships, into work-based work, into combining real-world learning with what they're experiencing out in the real world. So I'm creating that plan for the next 5 years through APLA High. And then, God willing, going to get an elementary school started for the little kiddos. That'll be our first venture into primary. So summer's busy, man. Like, it's when we're planning all of the things, because we got to implement it when we come back in July. And then I'm going to take off for a little vacay in July. You guys got the 4th of July plans? It's the 4th of July. Do you like that?
We'll
I
be
took that from the first of the month. It's
Yeah.
the first
You gonna be down here?
San Diego's a pretty solid spot for 4th of July.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Usually we go to another country, but we'll be in the US of A. But we are having our mother-daughter trip for around the 4th of July. And before that, I'll be at the charter school conference. They're having a charter school conference in Orlando.
Oh, the national one?
Yeah. So
Nice.
I'll be there
This
for
year we could not afford it. Lots of cutbacks. A lot of Texas school districts are super duper in the red, super in debt. So we got our minds at P's and Q's, although I would have loved to be at the national conference, especially in Orlando. Like, it's be hot as hell down there, but you got yourself some Disney World.
Yes.
You got Mofongo.
Oh, yeah.
You got Animal Kingdom. You got Waka Caca con queso.
We got
You're gonna have all the things down there.
Thank yours. All right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that last part was all about, but
It's something cocoa.
I'm conflating
something with cheese.
like
I
Saturday
think.
Night Live.
are you mixing
Big
cultures?
Poppy sketch, with what's going on in Orlando. Kenan Thompson did an impersonation of Big Poppy, who played for the Boston Red Sox, and the entire impersonation was based on what he was going to have for lunch.
Oh,
So we're gonna have a big Dominican lunch. We're gonna have mofongo. We're gonna have waka caca con queso. And Orlando's got all the things, so you're gonna have all those things. Yeah, I'm not too sure what waka caca con queso is. I have to look that up. Something with cheese.
Might not be a
Something with
thing.
cheese.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, indeed. I'm assuming we've done. I missed a couple of the check-ins.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. You were the last one. You came right on time.
All right, well, this show is like super germane to our own David Castillo. Don't know, Jubilee, if you were out and about this past weekend. Were you?
I was, but this weekend I hosted a Juneteenth festival in the city. So that's where I was. I was line dancing with the blacks, with my people, and eating corn on the cob, Mexican corn on the cob.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I would. Interestingly enough, I'm only 20 minutes from DC, from certain parts of DC, which I was not going anywhere near there, but I was surrounded by blackness and melanin and love, and this weekend. So that's how.
Okay, that sounds beautiful. Yeah, Juneteenth. Shout out to Texas. The reason that we celebrate Juneteenth is because of Texas, because June 19th was the day Texas finally decided to be the very last state to acknowledge the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment. So once again, Texas wins in racism.
Always number one.
Yeah, we got to be number one in something apparently, and that is truly what we're number one at right now.
All right,
but
I love.
yeah. So while Juneteenth celebrations were happening across the country, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about No Kings. So last show we dipped into what was going on with ICE and immigration, and the logical follow-up clearly is what has happened with demonstrations across the country. So I'm going to kind of give you all a little bit of a factual snapshot. What were the numbers? What were the stats for our audience, for ourselves? And then I've got some really strong questions about organizing and demonstrations in America. So if we can have some of those questions queued up, and I'm going to kind of go through the tail of the tape. So what happened, ladies and gentlemen? The No Kings protest happened this past weekend. We're talking over 2,100 rallies took place in over 2,000 U.S. cities, including territories, and across 20 other countries, not just the United States, making this the largest single-day protest in modern U.S. history. So we had an estimated 4 to 6 million participants, with huge turnouts in New York City of about 50,000 people and 80,000 in Philadelphia, which is enormous. So if you're like, what is the No Kings protest? This was a protest essentially in response to Donald Trump and his militarization of the United States. So not just his parade, where there were tanks floating down the streets of Washington, D.C., which is something new. We usually do not have tanks rolling down Philadelphia Avenue or down Mesa Avenue in Texas, or down San Vicente to the 405. But in addition to that, it really has become a backlash to the militarized cities that Trump has decided to use as his targets for large-scale deportation and lack of due process. So, branded as the No Kings Day of Defiance, the movement opposed what many perceived as Trump's authoritarian drift, basically his ongoing military pageantry, not just the parade, which, by the way, like, kind of sucks, because I think that the military and their service deserved accolades and a celebration. It was the 250th birthday of the American military. And I mean, like, for the United States, like 250 years going back to like George Washington, like going back to Lafayette, going back to like Ulysses S. Grant. And for all those that have served in the armed services, this was really supposed to be a pretty amazing moment of, hey, we've been coordinating this celebration for 250 years to celebrate all of those in the armed service. It was tied to Memorial Day. And I think the protest really exclaimed how Trump kind of branded this thing as his own and kind of usurped the attention away from the troops to his, particular ideologies, him and the far right, and your whole, like, what is it? Project 2025?
I think so.
That whole fun cohort.
Yep.
So we're not going to get in so much into that as much as like this protest really was backlash. So slogans that you could see on signs everywhere, everything from democracy, not dynasty, to a king of fools is a danger to us all. And imagery like a giant baby Trump with balloons. Like a giant balloon of a baby Trump.
It was very funny. And he was actively like,
like surpassed. There were some other interesting signs about, like, trying to remember some of the crazier ones. Something to the tune of like like I signed up for this abortion, or abortions are abortions are sweet, or God loves abortions. Because like, the whole like, it's Pride Month, so there's a lot of those signs that like quote, and this is a quote, ladies and gentlemen, God hates fags is a prevalent sign, sadly, during the anti-pride moment. So someone occupied that and said God loves abortions on a sign. Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Good times in America. So a couple of things. There were protests not just in major cities, but in red states, blue states, red cities, blue cities. We're talking all across the country, everywhere from Big Rapids, Michigan to Laredo, Texas, had massive protests, including El Paso, by the way. And they were overly peaceful. So there were only a couple of few outbursts. One notable one is
Salt
Salt
Lake.
Lake City.
Yeah.
Salt Lake City, right? That got like national headlines with the gentleman brandishing an AR-15.
Ugh.
Yep.
What happened to
Uh,
handguns?
yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened to just, hey, man, how about like not carrying military arsenal?
Yeah.
There were 3 arrests in Austin, Texas. There was
Hmm.
20,000 attendees. And I got to tell you, if you look at the video of Austin, those police officers were kind of provoking that situation. Not kind of, deeply provoking that situation. I think Governor Abbott and Texas were like, we're going to show everybody what Texas does. And what Texas does, once again, is not only are we number one in racism, but we are number one in violence, provoking peaceful protesters, particularly those in Austin. So we all saw that this was a huge nonviolent movement, that people across the country and the globe got together. And while I think just by the numbers of anywhere from like 6 to 8 million people came out in support, our first question is really about the protest itself. Do we think that this protest was successful? So, like, how do we qualify the success of such movements? So, I
Hmm.
would say, just to kind of ground us, and do we think this was successful? You look at something like Me Too. That was a highly successful movement. Why? It has led to Supreme Court cases. It has led to arrests. Harvey Weinstein, as an example of that, is in jail for the rest of his life. Co-conspirators are getting arrested. Laws are being changed. Sexual harassment issues have been reported at skyrocketing numbers. I think the ethos of reporting a situation has not only increased exponentially, but hopefully, right? Like, females feel significantly more empowered, safer, but particularly safe to report.
Hmm.
Whereas on the flip side, what the fuck did Occupy Wall Street accomplish?
Yeah.
Right? So here is the juxtaposition between a highly successful movement and a fucking lost opportunity. Just
Yeah.
lost. So my first question to the group is really that, like, do we think this was successful? But what the hell do we in modern day brandish as a successful movement? Ooh. Ooh.
That's a good question.
And David, you were there, so you may want to start
I
with
was
talking
there.
about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fact
Yeah.
that you were there with your son, and it was
Yeah.
badass.
So
You.
we hit record now. So that was absolutely like San Diego's largest ever single 1 day protest,
Wow.
which is insane. And then it was also obviously the largest like national mobilization, even like Vietnam War protests, all that stuff. I mean, this was a big day. So I think I mean, we had about 60,000 people in San Diego. That's different numbers are showing up. Our local police force were putting out tweets and saying like, okay, be safe, everybody. At the very end, they thanked the community. There were 0 arrests and 0 incidents with a protest of that size. So I think there's success. There's some success in that alone, right? No infiltration.
We should have put a pin on that, but continue going. High levels of success. Just say it again, because that's badass.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that it was the city's largest protest, and I think the country's largest protest too, and very, very few incidents, right? You imagine what could have transpired coming out of that.
Right, exactly.
I think Philly had the biggest attendance of all, about 75 to 80. So shout out Philly. Yeah,
Motown
shout
Philly,
out Philly.
Baby. Truly back.
Dallas, Fort Worth had big turnouts. So I think as a day, it was successful. So then the question is, like, now what, right? Like, I went, right. I found out about it. Nobody asked me to sign up for a newsletter or to take action or this or that, which is normal because these things are huge. I mean, you go to this place, and I went with my son, and I told him, I'm like, listen, we're going to go. It's probably going to be chaotic. And we're just going to go. They're not going to have a stage. It's just, you just go and you're in the sea of people, and then just wait and figure out when people start moving in a particular direction. And then we flow with them. And that's exactly what happened. But I think there's something to be said for going to a protest. Just like, something about it is, it feels like cathartic, right? It's like, I'm not happy with what's going on in the world right now. I think Trump clearly has demonstrated that he is, assuming that he has way more power than he should have, according to like our Constitution. That's a history lesson right there, right? What about the legislature? What about the judicial? It's all about the executive branch, right? He's like, this is like the checks and balances, right? So there's so many opportunities to teach history that goes back to the actual founding of this country. As problematic as that was, don't talk to me about Native Americans and slavery and all of this, but still the general like ideals of like what we're supposed to be about, he is like spitting in the face of it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to teach, but more like tactically, like point blank, like how does this translate to success in the midterms?
Okay, that's actually a really good spot. So I love this, man. Like, I'm playing teacher right now. You articulated a solid success. We're out here in the.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
In this classroom, you are free to do as you wish to make a decision, so long as your deliverables are done by the end of class, young man. Man, kick-ass success in millions of people out, and extraordinarily few incidents at all, which, dude, this could have popped off like you said. But I love the fact that, like, maybe our success isn't going to be figured out until the midterms, but we'll get to that. Jubilee, success or not, I don't know.
I'm like the both ends kind of woman.
I like the both ends, but we got to hear the both end, because I got a lot of both ends on this one.
I think so. I think.
I got to add one more quick thing. It's it's one sentence. There was also a noticeable lack of not just people of color. There was actually like a good percentage of Latinos, but like African American representation was way, way lower than the demographic of San Diego. So I'll leave that there. Notice that. Yeah.
Interesting. So I think, yes, depending on where you're looking, right? So when we do things, we have a goal. I think there's an internal metric and then there's an external, right? I think external, if we're trying to get to Trump and say, hey, we don't want any kings, this is not a monarchy, a dictatorship, right? All the things. I think he's a bit tone deaf, and he doesn't listen. Like, that's the whole point of this whole thing, right? But his constituents and those other people, I don't think that they're as tone deaf or stubborn as him. So I think that they might be a bit more responsive to pressure. So I don't know that it was a success there yet. But I also think because of this next thing I'm going to say, which is the internal metric. That is, we're going to put pressure. We're not going to be silent. We're not going to ignore what's going on. We're going to fight against complacency, apathy, right? Mediocrity, like all the things that as a nation, we could actually just sit and be like, yeah, this is Trump. This is what he does. We're just going to have 4 hard years. And this is how the guy runs the country, and then be like, and take the remote and change the channel while the world is imploding. So I think, literally, the fact that we responded as a people, I mean, the number is like less than 1% of the nation's population. However, the amount of people that showed up are like equivalent to the size of countries like Ireland, New Zealand, Croatia, Costa Rica, Norway, right? And so that, I think that says something, that we're alive and well. We're not dead. We care. We will show up. We will press. We will push. We will advocate. And I think that in and of itself is a win, because there are other responses, and complacency is one of them. Ignoring what's happening is one of them. And some of the greatest atrocities that have happened in world history have been because a group of people, right, like, were taken advantage of, and there was no one that was pushing back to be like, no, this is wrong, right? And so I think this showed the strength of us as American people, saying that we're not going to stand for this. Like, we want a democracy, right? And even if Trump kind of, he had 2 responses, right? He kind of downplayed it a bit. Oh, I'm not a king, right? If you're disrupting the parade, we're going to get you, kind of thing. And then he doubled down, right? So like all the immigration stuff, the ICE stuff that was happening, became more of that. So, but I still think the message was strong enough where it reached him, because he's responding to it, even though it's not, favorable, or he's not, eating. But I think it was strong enough to send a message, and I think that we should definitely keep going, because it is our voice. Those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, like, I got to tell you, the signs were hysterical. I'm really paying attention. I like the fact you're like, hey, we're coming out, and that's already a win. And David, like, hey man, like, let's check out, see what happens in the midterms, but here's some quantitative levels of success. I get very curious about this, because I saw what happened with Me Too, and saw, yeah, dude, like, laws have changed, things actually got enacted, and Occupy really worried me, Occupy Wall Street, because it was really, David, you said it best. It's like, okay, now what? So we occupied Wall Street, and then like jack shit happened. And I think one of my huge qualifiers is, do people across the country know what to do now? Because like, on one end, it's like, hey man, I wish all those people who came out for the No Kings protest voted, because I guarantee you that especially the younger demographic who are out there protesting probably didn't vote. So, and I get it, protests are a lot sexier than going to like the voting booth, but then it becomes like, what's the next step? What's the next strategy? Are we aligned? And I think that's kind of the next major question that I want you all, to ponder, as I'm kind of giving my last thoughts on this one, is, does the left have a problem with focus? So like, and I mean that because, some of the things that I saw in the protests, this was really about Trump militarizing this country, getting rid of due process, thus the No Kings. Like, you can't just throw away the Constitution and do what you want like a king. This is why we developed the Constitution in the first place and got away from England and George III and all those fun things. It's particularly tied to due process of law. Then it's like, you've got pro-Palestine people out there, and I'm like, all right, like, you're missing the point of this here protest. And then you've got like pro-abortion people out there. They're like, yeah, fucking God loves abortions. I'm like, wait, what? And then you've got eat the rich. So I'm just, one of the things that I'm worried about in this, was this a success? And what are our items now? What do we do now? All of this conflates itself into this thing of, is there a strategized focus on the left, or are we just so jumbled up with all of these issues that we can't focus, and that is going to be our ultimate demise? And I mean, ultimately, look, dude, that led to a 2024 win of a President Trump,
Yeah.
which, you know, I've got my speculations as to whether or not he tampered with voting machines, and the far right tampered with the technology and the voting machines. It's just weird that Elon Musk invested like millions upon millions upon millions of dollars into like voter technology. I'm like, that's weird. You know, I'm always
Yeah.
like follow the money and shit. So are we just so fucking jumbled up, or do you think that things are getting into a level of precise organization with the left?
I would say I think the left is like very slow to capitalize on particular moments, and that's what you kind of have to do in the game of politics, right? You have to like right now we're living in this moment where you know, we had these unprecedented protests, right? Just focus on that. You had Trump on the same day for his birthday kind of co-opt, you know, the armed forces and all of the stuff, just like for his own whatever, just to appease his ego, right? And at the same time, you have an ongoing conflict, Palestine and Israel. You see, like, and we could talk about that forever, but like, you know, I mean, that is what it is, and I think some people are starting to like see that for what it is. Even people that are like, you know, center right. Now we have this new conflict that we're getting dragged into with Iran, right? And a lot of people that supported Trump, they supported him, and the only thing that he said that came out of his mouth that resonated with me is that he doesn't like war. That was it. And now look at us. Now look at what's happening, right? We're like in 3 active conflicts right now, and the U.S. is, you know, directly, indirectly involved in Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine, Israel, Iran. All 3 of them now, right? That's not what most Trump supporters voted for him for. And so you're in this perfect moment, but like, where is the, you know, like, where is the left, the far left? Where's the Democratic Party? Like, you know, you have to capitalize on this moment. And I just feel like, I don't know what it is. I think we struggle with like who's running the show, you know, who's going to come out and like speak on these things. And if you miss that window of time, like, it's over, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely well said. I think it's just like in Marshall Gann's, the theory of urgency is you're at this right time at the right place, but then you've got to hit what's next. How do you keep the momentum up? What are people doing? What's the next thing that you can exercise? And I get it. Like, you have a multi-million person demonstration, which, by the way, like, it not to get on a whole tangent here, but I kind of will, just because I thought it was like a funny aside, like the multi-million dollar expense that Trump had for his like military parade. And then there was like 5 people out there, dude.
Yeah.
Like literally 5 people. Marco Rubio was caught on tape, like yawning throughout the entire thing. But it's like,
it was horrible.
Getting back to No Kings, multi-million person demonstration. And you have this like heat of the moment. And then it's a matter of like, dude, like, what do we do next with this? Like, and I think people are fed up because it's like, hey, man, we write Congress and nothing happens, or we vote and nothing happens. Like, first, you're not voting, just straight up as a political scientist, like, you're not voting. I think the midterm thing is going to be interesting. If he keeps fucking up the economy and immigration, there's no doubt, like, protest or no, he's going to get destroyed in the midterms. The question is this going to mobilize enough people to vote? But the question is, what does this mobilize people to do? And just for our audience, like, what would you suggest is the next step? But Jubilee, like, I don't know, do we have a problem with focus, or are we finally coming together and saying, as you know, and not just left, I think you've got everything from center right to center, to center left, to left. I think the only group that was kind of not super participating in this was MAGA, and even those folks were out in numbers because they're like, hey, we didn't sign up to have, you know, Esmeralda, Hilda, and like Consuelo, who work in our kitchen, who, you know, are out here farming, who are actually our neighbors deported. We thought you were going to get rid of the criminals. So how do you feel about the left? Are we fucking up?
I mean, I think so. I think it is a bit of a lack of focus, and I think an inability to develop momentum early enough on to where it will make an impact when election time comes. Because and so I'll clarify. So by focus, I mean just like identifying the thing. I like getting really clear on like what the things are going to be, and not kind of chasing the carrot, because new things always are going to come up, right? But it's just like, but what are the foundational things that we're saying, look, these are the things we're going to focus on. We can't fix everything, but these are the things that are becoming effed up, whether it's the economy, right? Whether it's, you know, healthcare, whatever it is. And this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to band together, and we're going to grapple with this, and we're going to develop, you know, voice around this, and we're going to build consensus, and we're going to talk about this and talk about this and talk about this and get the research and get the money and get the consistently, rather than when something new comes up, now we're over here focusing on that. Now we're over here focusing on that. There's no way to build momentum around that, right? There's no way to keep people like galvanized when like your mission, you know, isn't clear. So I do think I think that's the issue. And I think that all has to do with like strategy, right? And being focused and really understanding the core of what people really, really, really think, care about in this country, and not being like swaying back and forth like a palm tree in the wind, you know?
Yeah. And like, let me add just a little taste to that, because alongside these protests, you've got AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Bernie kind of on the rally circuit themselves. They're like, well, I guess if Trump's going to hold his like bonkers rallies, we're going to hold rallies ourselves. And I think a lot of people are saying, well, look, dude, we're holding rallies that's successful. The question is, to what end? And are they successful themselves? And are those people going to vote? And I think it gets into the fact that like we all can coalesce around this one issue, but the Democrats have a really good way of fucking everything up. So it's just like, we get to election day and all of a sudden it becomes fucking identity politics again. It becomes like the stupidity of, you know, these, in my opinion, like ridiculous platforms, because the platform clearly is about, hey man, are we getting people good jobs? Are we stabilizing the economy? Is America safe? Are we keeping up the Constitution? Like, it's not just about democracy. I think it's about, hey man,
morals.
Do I feel safe in this country? And do I feel like this leader is going to keep me safe and uphold the values of America? Because I'm telling you, that's the biggest gruff at all these town halls. So I'm watching all these town halls, right? And like for Republican senators and Republican congressmen, I'm sure you guys have seen them. And like you've got people that vehemently voted for Trump, and they're like, hey, Senator, you sent that guy to El Salvador? Like, what the fuck? You're going to go there and bring him back? And like this guy's like, that's not the constitutional part of the legislator. He's like, I don't give a shit what is or what's not. This guy's not following the Constitution. So maybe you should go do something to help out this dude because the court said so. And I think this is where I'm getting really worried about, hey, like this, we're all celebrating, like, hey, no king. He's like, this is great. And like Chris Rock joked about, hey, you know, OJ got freed. And Chris is like, you know, what we won. Like, we won. I was like, what the fuck did we win? Did I get my OJ prides today? Like, it worries me that we're going to fuck this up. And like, it kind of begs the next question, because I've been pondering this one for a while. Like, in an age where AI and bots are the overwhelming majority of social media. By the way, this is insane. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen these statistics. The overwhelming majority of shit that you see on social media is not even humans anymore. That's not a person that's sending out, like it used to be our like uncle or that weird friend that's like, yeah, like fucking fascism forever. It's bots and AI that's sending
Yep.
out visceral shit onto social media and posts. And then interestingly enough, bots responding. I mean, truly, it's like Terminator. It's like bots versus bots. And
Yeah.
with like this shit proliferating to the extent of that is truly creating deep impact in human psychology, in voting. Are protests archaic? Like, do they work anymore? Because like I love Jubilee's both end. On one end, it's like, dude, this was, I think, a demonstration to the United States and the world that there's a humongous group of people that are not supportive of Trump, so that we're not all getting lumped into this like, hey, we're all pro-Trump. Like Australians, that was the first thing they asked me when I was over there. They're like, hey, how do you feel about this guy? And I'm like, I kind of like democracy, and I kind of like intelligent people, and I really don't like his cronies and his lackeys, the sycophants. I don't like these loyalists. I don't like Plan 2025 because that's the dismantling of our social fabric. We shouldn't be all lumped in together. I don't lump you guys all together. And they're like, it's good to see resistance. And I think this was a televised demonstration, in my opinion, that was quite organized in its televised and social media prowess. I thought they did that super well of like, hey, world, we adamantly oppose this and we can use all the support that we can get. And I think it also convinced a shitload of other Americans like, oh, I'm not alone. Like what I feel is positive. On the other end, is this going to have an impact? So like, do these things actually work?
I think we're always going to need this form of public dissent because at least it's like shots fired, like it just lets you know, hey, we the people, we're not happy about this. Something needs to change. And so I think we're always going to need that, but another both and, right? Like it always takes a village. we need this form of public dissent. We need the folks that are writing letters. We need the community organizations to do their bit. We need money. We need money that is going to, fund or carry our voices into spaces where money is the lever, right? That's the other piece. So I think we always need this. And it's funny because there was some things going on in my district and some stuff happened at my son's school. And he was like, Mommy, what can I even do about it? There's nothing I can do. They're not going to stop till someone dies. And I was like, I felt so bad that he, felt that way. And I was like, no, there's always something you can do, right? And I started sharing with him how he could share his dissent, right? Versus being in a place where it's like, I'm apathetic, I can't, right? I'm like, you can write a letter, you can send something, to this person, you can email this person, you can give feedback on this survey, you could showing him how to push back, right, against systems that are not aligning and doing what they promised to do. You know what I mean? So I think like just as a safety mechanism to ensure that like folks know, hey, your voice always matters and you showing up to a space like this is always going to matter. I think we need this, but I do think it is a starting point. And also when we look back 5 years to George Floyd, even though so many people have reverted back to pre-COVID stances as it comes to anti-racism stances, like that worked, right? It worked, right? It was conditional based on who was in office, based on what we see happen here with Trump and all of his diversity, equity, inclusion shifts and all of that. However, the point was that it was foots on necks. That was foots on necks, and people. And I don't even know if it was we had international protests, around us. So maybe it was as big as this or bigger. But the point is, it was foots on necks. And it did bring about some changes for businesses and in government and in policy around that. So,
I think just very, very quickly, I think it matters. I think going back to your point, Omar, the fact that there is this whole like growing world of social media that is essentially like not real, right? So to show up in the flesh and to be around so many people shows you and shows young people that it's actually real, right? There's actually like there are people out here that care about similar causes. It's a way for people to connect. It's a way for people to like let out anger and frustration. And then on the part of the organizers, it's an opportunity to like, you know, help to get people organized. You know, and so I think, you know, I mean, does it work? You know, like,
yeah.
And it also sends a message. I think I agree with the whole like shots fired thing. And this is definitely a shots fired towards Trump.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jubilee's assessment of like, look, you can't just sit passively and say like, hey man, things don't work. I think what I would love to see is one, dude, I'd have been out there with like some clipboards and shit, being like, yo,
yeah,
here's the next step. Like we are like the urgency of the time, and like here are all the next things that we're gonna do. Can I contact you? And can we just like, hey man, it's either gonna be like, here's the next rally, or like we're gonna flood like funny shit. Like imagine, because like it's one thing, I think, and Jubilee, you said it best, for like your son to write a congressman. Like it'd be hysterical had they fucking mobilized millions of people and we're like, we're all gonna write this one congressman or this one senator on this shit and let them know we're fucking watching with the like big beautiful bill. Like imagine the power of on one day you bust the entire of the senator's computer system because everyone is infiltrating this one system with emails.
Yep.
Or imagine the letters. Imagine if like all these millions of people decided to write a postcard being like, we hate the big beautiful bill, and sending it. And it's coordinated. Yep. So instead of being like, write your congressman, then people feel like they're part of a movement. People feel like, well, I'm not just writing this person. I'm with 6 million other people. And there's going to be social media of the bags and bags and bags and bags and bags of email, or like a computer blowing up and frying itself. And that's what I really am getting at is like, where's the coordination? Where's the strategic coordination? Because in today's world, sadly, if television was the utensil for the 60s and the civil rights movement, social media and television, really video, must be the utensil. And imagine seeing videos of computers literally on fire because 6 million people barnstormed like Lindsey Graham's like server, or Mitch McConnell's like server, you know, or, you know, J.D. Vance's server, which like, that's hysterical to me. But it's also a movement where people feel like they're part of something. And I think that was the solidarity and success of No Kings. It was like, I am part of something. I am not alone. And it feels very isolating and sad just to be like, I'm going to write my senator today. And that sucks, and I'm home alone, and that's all we're doing. Versus you're part of this, and like imagine if they like organized it, like you're on a ticker tape, and like you punch in a little yes, like I sent this in, and you're seeing the thermometer rise. I think that is really what we are missing in the Democratic Party or on the left is how is this coordinated? And how do we have like real actionable items that people could be a part of? And I really do think that like, and this is just my 2 cents, like stop fucking issue jamming everything. Like if you're going to be out there against Kings and the content of this protest, which is marred in like pure political philosophy, this is Locke, it's Rousseau, it's Montesquieu, you know, the fact that we created this whole representative democracy and we were really the first in modern era to pull it off. Like, don't conflate shit with like, well, we need, you know, we need fucking all the abortions and we need Bilbo Baggins back in office and fucking Kool-Aid for everybody. I'm like, look, dude, I'm all for fucking universal income. I'm all for universal healthcare. But if we're going to like concentrate, because like you're gonna piss off a bunch of people who otherwise would be there and support you with all these other issues that aren't galvanized in an organized way. So dude, we're already at like 9 minutes out. So
So
I'm just gonna kind of
let me
press
show
this
you
last
something
item.
really
Yes,
quick.
please do.
So for the young people that were not able to participate in the protests, or thinking about this, is another angle to this. This is fascinating. There were massive protests that were happening in the virtual world on Roblox, right? Around the anti-ICE.
Wow.
Yep. These videos have gone viral on TikTok and everything, but like
Wow.
massive numbers of users were staging.
That's amazing.
These, digital online virtual protests. It's still connecting with people. That's just how young people connect, right? Not like, in our world. So
the children are okay. Yeah.
Well, it's also like, dude, if you're like 10 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old, unless you're out there with a parent, like this is such a wonderful way to participate. And like you said, dude, like participation is so varied. I think as Jubilee stated best, like all that matters is the participation, just to mobilize ourselves. So last question, and then we got to hit final thoughts. I always want to loop this back into teaching and students. So how do the protests and freedom of speech teach our students about critical lessons that pertain to the Constitution, the law, and most importantly, the fragility of the social contract? I mean, fragile is all living shit, right? I think it's like, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think peaceful protest is clear. I mean, it's one way to go out and exercise your First Amendment. It's embedded in the First Amendment, right? And again, it's an opportunity to really understand, like what the First Amendment's all about, to go out and take action on it. And as long as you're peaceful, you really shouldn't have any problems. And I think we saw that for the most part. I think protest is a healthy indicator for a healthy society. And I'm not saying that we're healthy right now, but the fact that we have these big protests and very few incidents, it still says something about our democracy, right? And there's still a lot of work to do. So I think that's probably not the most articulate response, but I think for young people, it's like this is like what that particular the freedom to assemble. This is what it means. You go out, you do it. It's an action.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Agreed. I think it's important to to continue to teach that we have to push back, especially against this narrative, right? Some protesters were called animals, right? Foreign enemies. No,
this is my country,
sure. Right? I love my country, and I can critique it, right? Just like James Baldwin says. So I think that's key, especially in this day where our young people, they're growing up and they just came from Biden, and people can have all their, thoughts about that. Seeing, VP Harris and that whole thing. And, there was a lot of hope that was circulating that, even though people feel like it missed the mark, to now having this dude in office that like doesn't care what what anybody has to say. And I think it's a dangerous place for us to not continue to empower our young people and let them know, hey, your voice is where it starts. Right. Some people are leaving the country. they're becoming expatriates, and they're like, hey, forget this. I'm moving to Singapore. I'm moving to Iceland or whatever. Right. But for us that are staying here, I think it's important for us to know that that our voices, have power, along with other measures to push back, right, against this narrative that's being put out there. And then I'll go into my final thoughts, because I see we have 4 minutes. So I was just looking up. I think we are like angry, like, anger is a lever dissatisfaction is a lever. But I also think that the stuff that's happening, by way of the government is happening to those that are considered to be voiceless, right? To the least of them. And so, my wondering is around like, how do we galvanize that group of people? I would imagine that they were represented in somewhere in this 4 to 6 million, but I would imagine that many of them probably were not, right? And so then I'm thinking about our allies and co-conspirators, right? And what they're representing. And then I'm connecting that to your earlier question about focus, right? And I'm just wondering, like, with $45 million spent, right? And I looked it up. I'm like, well, what can we do with $45 million, which was the cost of this parade, right? We could feed 180,000 people for a month. We could house 5,000 people for a year. We could get 3,000 students fully educated, and for Job Corps, that was just cut. We could put them through this program. About 1,125 students could be served through Job Corps for a year. And so, to your earlier question, we talk about focus, right? And being able to identify what we care about as a nation, right? This is an atrocity that we have tanks that the government said, oh yeah, we'll or the army said, we'll pick up the tab when we ruin your streets with the tanks that really shouldn't be driving through local streets. We'll also pick up the tab, because that's just how much money we have to waste. And a government that says we're trying to reduce waste, but we are allowed to waste, right? Like that whole contradictory piece there is angering,
Massive.
Who's calling that out and saying, just as a nation, we're saying home of the free, land of the free, home of the brave, right? Where we're saying that it's freedom and opportunity and all of that, but we are taking $5 million so tanks can go down a local street for a parade that nobody wants except for the president. Like who's standing up for that? For the people that are just waiting for somebody to bring them a sandwich, right? Or a kid who doesn't have an opportunity to, because Job Corps is shut down, to not be in the streets, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, I just think let's continue to keep our voices alive and have and diversify, to Omar's point, but also like figure out ways to strategize around elevating the voice of the voiceless for stuff that's happening to everyday people. We don't want a king. And we also have a lot of resources in this country to help our everyday, fellow man, fellow woman, fellow person that we're not addressing because of the way this government is moving.
Straight up, man. Some hypocrisy called out by our Queen Jubilee. Yeah. We don't want no queens, but we got a queen here on the show. I
think
hypocrisy was nuts. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just very quickly, I think it's important for people to get out and protest, and I think it's also important for people to ask, okay, now what? Now what are we going to do? I also think, like a big thing that I saw and a lesson to be taught is, the No Kings March in San Diego was overwhelmingly white, and white. Oh no, get down. White people are generally like the ones that probably have, the least threats targeted towards their communities, right? So this idea of like solidarity, right? Solidarity going back to like the Me Too movement, where men stood up in solidarity with women, with George Floyd, where people that are probably like, least likely to be impacted by police violence. And now what's happening now with immigration and ICE and people that are, not going to, they have zero threat to be pulled up on by ICE and be, deported back to a country that maybe they haven't stepped foot in like 20 years. Right. And having families torn apart. I think also solidarity with, the people of Palestine, and, the concept of solidarity, right? Like we are actually stronger together. I think it's a powerful lesson that, I'm taking away from what I'm seeing now. I think it's important for people to get out and, and then figure out like, what's next? Now, what are we going to do? Right. Going back to the idea of like focusing on the midterms that are coming up, right? How do we send a message to Trump that, he's clearly on the wrong track? And also, I mean, the last thing I'll say is like, we've had protest movements in this country, going back hundreds of years. Show me a time when we've ever had such a large protest movement that was actually directed at a president.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. I mean, I think the Tea Party was a direct response to like a Barack Obama, because just racism, right? But those people had always existed and will always exist. Sadly, hopefully, those racist fascists dissipate as time goes on. But I think you bring up a hell of an example of like, oof, Jesus, not since what, like James Garfield, William McKinley, Millard Fillmore. All presidents that I'm sure no one even remembered were presidents. Although Millard Fillmore famous for being the least remembered president number 13 from Buffalo, New York. I think you bring up a really good point. I was excited to see this movement because while I don't think Donald Trump gives a flying shit about the protests and what they're doing out there, I actually think that members of Congress are looking at that and shitting bricks because they're like, oh shit. Because if this is what it's going to look like, and I won riding on Trump's coattails, and this is all going to fall apart, like this isn't looking good for me. Like my hope is that the chickens come home to roost. Like you aligned yourself with this, what do you call the green Cheeto, the green monster, the orange monster, the like whatever the shit he is. And I don't want to demonize him to make him into some kind of stooge. It's really the people that are behind him that are, because I don't think he gives a shit, but I really do feel like the people behind his policies are the ones all about creating this fear and militarization. And well, if we militarize it and we get rid of democracy, boom, like we're rich, we can rule, and we don't have to worry about the rule of law, the Constitution, or anything else. So with kids, I think it's incredibly important to teach three major things. One, what the hell is a social contract? Because I think a lot of people take for granted how fragile it's an idea. It is not some the Constitution, we talk about it all the time, but like you've got a president absolutely ignoring the Constitution and a Supreme Court cut off at the knees to be able to enforce their judicial action because the enforcement is alongside the president. So this is why no kings. And I think it's important for kids to understand like the basic tenets of, hey man, here's separation of powers, here's checks and balances, but here's how fragile this social contract is. Read yourself some Rousseau and some Locke and understand that like all this just lives with people. And if people aren't going to support it, then it will crumble and it will fall down. And we've seen that happen around the world. But I would say the last thing I would teach kids is what does successful movements look like? And how do successful movements keep up their momentum with very definitive actionable items? What do we do next? So unless we're pretty much at time, on behalf of the South Star Classroom, that is Dr. Charles Cole, who we missed and hopefully will be this next time, the Queen, Jubilee Ransom, and the Beard of Knowledge, David Castillo. I'm your co-host, Omar Yanad. We'll see you same bat time, same bat channel next week, ladies and gentlemen. Tune in and share. Peace.